Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of ET Prime's Prime Talk, a platform where we invite experts to speak about the subjects that matter. I'm Isha Trivedi, and I track the healthcare and pharma space at ET Prime. Today, we are going to talk about a very interesting topic, the rise of online healthcare platforms, their business strategies, and the changing ecosystem of healthcare delivery in India. The pandemic has really fast-tracked adoption of digital, be it booking your medicines or tests online, or seeing your doctors virtually. Healthcare is probably now at your fingertips. Digital health is going through a really exciting phase because the consumer base is widening, the businesses are evolving, there's a push from the government, and a strong interest from investors. To understand more about this space, we have with us three experts who have been an integral part of India's digital journey. So please welcome Prashant Tandon, co-founder and CEO of Tata 1mg, Vishal Bali, executive chairman of Asia Healthcare Holdings and senior advisor at TPG Growth, and Satish Kannan, co-founder and CEO of MediBuddy. Thank you all of you for joining us today. It's great to have you. Before we start the session, I would like to inform our members that through the session, you can ask questions to our experts. You'll see a Q&A box. You can post your questions from there, and towards the end of the session, we'll try to get them answered. So without further ado, let me just start. I would first want to hear from Vishal. If you could just set the context on how the entire digital health is shaping up in India. What have you really seen that has changed in the last 2-3 years? And from there on, we'll go further.
Sure, Isha, and it's a pleasure to be here on your show and also to participate with Prashant and Satish, who have done so much of work in the digital health space. If you just go back a couple of decades and look at the transformation journey of India's healthcare, our focus for a long period of time has always been around supply and demand of healthcare services in the country. And we've always sort of used the lens of number of hospital beds as the metric for healthcare access in this country. I think the COVID pandemic actually changed the entire thought process a lot more. While there was a lot of momentum which was happening behind the so-called digital health or health tech space over the last couple of years, I would say between 2014 and 2020. But I think the real acceleration behind this massive change has happened as the COVID pandemic took roots around the world, and rightly so even in India. I think one of the key drivers of this, and obviously India has gone through the technology revolution and a couple of other services, right? So financial services, so fintech, where a massive revolution has taken place in the way that financial services are consumed. Education, EdTech has been another massive disruptor with the way that education has gone online. And I think it was only time which was essential for healthcare to actually now go online too. I believe that the combination of services that we are seeing today happen on the so-called digital platform is more guided, frankly, by the fact that today there are 770 odd million internet users in the country, which is likely to be about 900 million odd in a very short period of time. I think what is really therefore important is how does this energy get transformed? There is a lot of capital which is being put. There are about 4,800 health tech companies which are now in the space. So obviously the game is getting a bit crowded, but it also shows that the massive opportunity that everybody is thinking this sector will evolve into. I think what is really critical is there is a fast adoption that has happened within the sector. I've been a part of this sector for 30 years. And I know for any change to happen in this sector, it is a decade journey, right? Because clinical behavior pattern changes take a long period of time. But I think the way that during the COVID pandemic, where even clinicians very quickly adopted teleconsult, telemedicine, e-prescription, EHR, everything that goes along with the technology side of it, just goes to show that India healthcare is actually on a massive transformation path. And I think it is therefore very important to sort of turn back and say that this is probably the most accurate time in our history in India's healthcare, where the transformation that takes place between now and the next couple of years will actually bridge a big gap between access and affordability of healthcare. And people have generally been talking about that in this change journey, is it all about only access? But I believe that a large portion of healthcare costs can also get hugely impacted in terms of by creating access online, where the cost reduction can also take place. So it is not just about accessibility, but I think there is also a cost efficiency metric that will begin to come in within the healthcare ecosystem. So I'm actually very excited by the change that's taking place. And obviously, there's almost now about $5 billion of funding that has happened in this sector and rising by the day, which also goes to show that the more capital that goes behind health tech enterprises or digital technology health tech companies, the more will be the change process and the faster it will be.
Great. I think it's visible. Every other person I see, every other bell that rings in my house will be an online delivery. Either it's of a consumer retail product or it's medicines from any of these, from Tata 1mg or Pharmacy. I think that change is really visible now. So I think we can go to Prashant now, and because he started this maybe more than a decade back. So what did you think about it that time? And do you think that the major shift that happened was only in the last 2 years, though you had started it very early on? And in your own business, what are the kind of changes that you have made to, keep up with this trend?
So I think the digital healthcare journey, it's been through a long period of evolution. And as Vishal mentioned, in healthcare, things take sometimes decades to even move, and behavioral change takes its time. We did see some very good traction. We did see a lot of encouraging reasons to be in business. And I think what we saw was that consumers were appreciating, and we were growing pretty well. But what COVID did was something very, very fundamental. I think what this last 2-year pandemic situation came around, the most important thing was healthcare has always been a multi-stakeholder ecosystem. So we had an ecosystem where consumers were getting their convenience and accessibility, affordability, but we were not getting the level of participation from the rest of the ecosystem as we would have liked, or what would kind of get the flywheel going, so to speak, which is now happening. Now, who are these other ecosystem players and partners? I think the number one and very important one in healthcare is the regulators. 2000 or 2001 is when the first telemedicine society of India was formed, and first draft for telemedicine came. What should be the laws governing it, this, that. And for 20 years, it had been work in progress. 3 days into the pandemic, the telemedicine guidelines were released. Now, these are monumental shifts for regulators to move. 3 days into the pandemic, when the country went into lockdown, e-commerce for pharmaceuticals was in the government notification one of the few essential services permitted to operate. And till that time, we were continuously trying to educate all kinds of stakeholders why this model is in line with the compliances required in the ecosystem, etc., etc. So now the regulators suddenly were very positive and supportive of this entire ecosystem. The second is pharma companies. The supply chains got disrupted. They figured that consumers need regular access. Doctors, very, very important stakeholders, hospitals and doctors, because patients could not come into the hospitals anymore. All of them needed to come onto the digital platforms to engage with their patients. It could be as simple as a WhatsApp platform, or it could be any of the various platforms out there. And doctors realize that it's actually safer for them not to have a situation of patients carrying infection coming through, and etc., etc. So when we had started, I think we started from a very fundamental belief that if healthcare were to be patient centric, the patient should be the last person who should be needing to leave the home, go through a inconvenience of dealing with healthcare, if that healthcare can be delivered to that patient at where the patient is in an efficient manner. We fundamentally believe that if you have an infection, and COVID kind of underlined everything about the value proposition we had been espousing for a while, you should not be going and sitting with 20 other probably infected or immunocompromised people and take more infections, give some out there in a laboratory in the early in the morning, or in a doctor's clinic or a pharmacy, so to be. Now, I think all that value proposition got underlined in a very, very radical way, much more than we bargained for, but it did happen that doctors and providers realized that patients are able to engage with them pretty decently on the digital platforms. They can continue their practices, take care of their patients. And this is a new, which used to be a very good to have peripheral activity. This entire digital world for the hospitals and doctors now became mainstream. And that these are shifts that otherwise you go brick by brick, one doctor at a time, one hospital at a time, and suddenly you saw a situation, it was ecosystem together. Insurance companies, corporates have in India been very few and far between corporates that would participate in the health journey of the consumer. Corporate health and wellness, and Satish, I'm sure, will have a lot more to contribute on that part, is suddenly one of the fastest growing parts of the healthcare ecosystem, where corporates really want to engage. And in all Western developed markets, that's a big part of the healthcare ecosystem. So we had a monumental moment of awakening of multiple stakeholders, and you need that to get this flywheel of sorts going, where from every angle there's supportive kind of movement. So that's what is happening as we speak. So having said that, I think every year we were growing 100%, 150%, but of a small base. Now we actually see this as becoming one of the key pillars of healthcare delivery ecosystem of the country. And that's where we feel the big change is coming now.
Right. I think that's what I was coming to Satish for, that, he had Docs app. So if you could even give us a sense that, initially how difficult it was for you to get doctors on board. And if in terms of numbers, if you can quantify that, you probably had this many doctors earlier, and now this is the range that you have. That will also help us understand the journey of how the change in behavior has happened for a lot of stakeholders.
Absolutely. So I think in a way, how we should think about this is just like how demonetization moment transformed the fintech industry in 3 days time it happened, and then since then the impact has been seen. Very similar to that, you can call COVID as sort of like a demonetization moment for the healthcare industry, and the digital transformation significantly spikes after that. Very true, right? The first set of time when I was actually started the company 2015, I used to personally go meet these doctors, and personally we started like 40 doctors, right? 40 doctors on the platform, and that's how we got started. They started doing online consultation, and it was six years ago, it was considered as very new thing. How can you do online? And that was the kind of conversations. But to fast forward today, I think we have close to like 90,000 doctors, right? So and then all of them are specialist doctors also. That means they're across multiple departments between general medicine, pediatrics, gynec, dermat, all the way till second opinions for cancer, right? Maybe you cannot treat and complete everything, but when you want to do a second opinion from a tumor board, you can do it very easily through the platforms these days. Now, the behavior change is very, very evident. I think both Prashant and Vishal talked about it. The fundamental points are this, right? All the key stakeholders in the ecosystem, starting the patient, of course, he immediately transformed because he wanted to talk to the doctor. They could not go offline, even if the hospital was nearby. But at the same time, if you're from a person from a very, very small town, there was just no way to travel. All of them would travel from, let's say, if you're in any of the small towns, you would travel to the big city, maybe 100, 200, 300 kilometers. but that would not happen now because of pandemic. But the important other stakeholders being doctors immediately adopted. So when I used to meet these doctors, they would say, Satish, look at my OPD. I mean, and there are so many people waiting in my OPD. Why would I need a software solution? Which is true, right? But as soon as COVID happened, all of this digital transformation happened so fast that there was nobody in the OPD, right? In a way, in the physical OPD. So they told, okay, I will get online. Hospitals adopted it so fast because they were not getting incoming customers, or let's say patients for that matter. Then of course, insurers, corporates, all the ecosystem has like significantly changed. And it has also increased, let's say, awareness among new areas like mental health, all of these, because it was of course, everybody understands it's very, very important, but at least the awareness as well as the need for this was felt very, very evidently during these times. So that's a kind of behavior changes that we have seen over these, let's say 2 years now, right? Yeah, 2 years now.
Just in your space, specifically talking about doctors, or they had to talk about OPDs. But as things normalize, the COVID tapers down, there'll be waves probably, but we'll keep having those ups and downs. What could be the normal run rate? I mean, do you think this can sustain beyond COVID as well? I would not say beyond COVID because I don't know how many years we're going to live with COVID. But just as they, keep doing, there'll be waves. So.
Correct. No, so how we should think about all of this is called as is the baseline shifting, and is the baseline shifting significantly. That's a key point, right? So a couple of things is the moment all of these, we had a couple of reasons, right? One, the moment lockdown happened, it spiked, right? 100% offline became 100% online in a way. That means you're like forcing the system to actually behave totally online. And as and when the lockdown actually gets opened, it actually falls down. But what's interesting is I will strongly believe that you would have moved at least 30 to 40% of OPDs now to online, right? And that will actually continue to sort of stay there. And this got reinforced. There's lockdown 1 or wave 1, then wave 2, then wave 3. So people also understand that they've been forced to use this, but it's very important, right? You go talk to all of these customers, they really tell you this. As long as actually I'm getting the same doctor, I really like the video call, because all the other inconvenience of traveling, parking your car, parking your bike, waiting for 30 minutes, 45 minutes for the 10-minute conversation or 7 to 10-minute conversation, they really get the value of the 10 minutes because you're doing 10 other things. In the video call is at 4 o'clock, you're there at 3:55, you get the job done, right? So in a way, customers are starting to see the value, and then that continues to get reinforced. So the baseline has shifted. Now, do I say that everything in the world will become digital? I think it is going to be a digital approach. It's going to have some physical element. It's going to have digital element. It's just that the digital is actually like growing very fast in the consultation. But build labs, build medicine. I think in all of this, the penetration is like significantly higher. Now people would consider it as a simple thing where somebody would come to my house, pick up my blood sample or RT-PCR or any of them. And medicine movement to online or digital has become like significantly higher, which will continue to happen, right? And if you talk mental health, all of these are areas which could not have been amenable to the offline world because of stigma and others. And all of them is like moving significantly online. And if you think small town, there's absolutely no access, right? So then for them, digital is the way to go. So that's why the baseline has shifted significantly. And the last point is, so the young population, if you see, right, kids who are like 5 years old and 10 years old do classes online, which means for them, digital is the way. For us, physical and digital is a combination. Let's fast forward 10 years, digital will be the way forward. And that would actually be like, let's say 60-40, it will turn around. Today it's like 30-70, it will be like 60-40 the other way around. And that's the kind of transformation that we would see in the coming years.
Great. Vishal, you have been on the offline healthcare delivery space for years, and you have seen that now we talk to most of the hospitals also, whether it's Apollo, Fortis, everybody is talking about how they're trying to get more and more people through the digital channel. That's a new funnel that they're getting more patients to. So do you think that because of that change, what is happening at the hospitals, that is also going to really contribute to the overall growth of this digital health ecosystem?
That's absolutely correct. If you take a look at what is the industry trying to do for the last many years, right? The industry has been trying to basically focus on customer centricity. The industry has always been trying to focus on creating a longevity of relationship with its consumers, right? And also building bridges on a continuous basis between their patient families and the healthcare provider as an entity. And a lot of that was being done through the offline route, creating little clubs, creating physical interfaces, which could sort of make that happen. I think one of the biggest enablers that the sector today sees is that relationship building and the longevity of customer relationship, digital has a big role to play in that. So as Prashant was talking about in terms of it all started with e-pharmacies, obviously it started with the convenience. Likewise, for the healthcare providers, it started with that what if my consumer engages with me both in the physical and the online world, I have a twin channel of engaging with my consumers. And obviously, with the rise of a lot of social media, with the interaction points, digital marketing is at an all-time high today. Right? You ask any provider group today, and the amount of money that they're pouring into digital marketing is much higher than what they have traditionally been doing in the offline marketing world. So I think digital has become like a go-to marketplace for all the healthcare providers to go and engage with their consumers. And the belief is that if the consumers are going to first interact with me in the digital world, they will continue to interact with me in the digital space. So it's like if your first customer interaction is taking place through Google or through Facebook or through any one of these other mediums, then the chances are that this is a consumer who is well versed on the digital side, and this patient or this family will continue to engage. So I think that's a big transformative change. The other one, which obviously, as I was saying, Isha, is that healthcare provider groups and the large physical healthcare provider groups like ourselves over a long period of time have also realized that there has to be a higher degree of efficiency now in the ecosystem. And efficiency of the way that you deal with your consumers, efficiency also with the way that you operate yourself, right? So a large part of this digital health ecosystem is also the electronic health records, it's the interface points, it's providing home healthcare, to your consumers. So you're trying to touch your consumer through various touch points, and you are then continuously engaged with this group of consumers. So I think that's really what is happening, that the large players today, and as you also know, that Apollo is actually starting a completely new franchise, which is their 24/7, because they do realize the fact that it's physical and virtual together. That's really going to be the next phase of the healthcare journey, and I 100% believe in that. So even some of the companies that we have within the AHH workforce, during the pandemic, we were talking as to how the whole change happened. So at Motherhood, which is our mother and child platform, even today, post normalization coming in, there are a lot of consumers who are now turning around and saying, my repeat consultation, virtual first. My first consultation, physical first. Right? So that's a big change. And the consumer has shifted, right? And I think the consumer has probably shifted permanently. And this is not because of the pandemic, but I think the pandemic had accelerated that change. And the consumer has really pivoted. So it's for all healthcare providers now to pivot along with their consumer and engage with them through the digital route.
Right. I think we can see there's a real shift in the behavioral patterns of how we look at healthcare or consume healthcare in a way. Let me bring Prashant here again. Since you mentioned how the physical, offline and online channels are kind of converging now, Apollo has an edge when it comes to having a large network of physical pharmacy chains or hospitals. So, Prashant, even you have been trying to get more Tata MG1MG is also trying to expand the physical network. So, why do you really think that it's important to have both from a business point of view? How does it really work better?
See, at the end of the day, it's about following the needs of the consumer and finding the best way to serve it. It's not like one channel is better or worse compared to any other. It is consumers today live in a truly omni-channel world, and we recognize that. And especially in the space of healthcare, we do understand that there's a huge value to the physical touch points as well. When it comes to acute and symptomatic care, consumers need medicines right now. the brick and mortar format continues to be very important uh, delivery mechanism in that kind of situations. Now, and at the end of the day, not every consumer is on the digital bandwagon today. So we feel that the time has come, the scale is already there with us, where bringing on or adding on select physical networks gives us a broader set of options to offer to our consumers. I think we can still digitally cover 80-85% of the needs, but having a physical location just enhances a lot of the physical connection that some consumers need for specific kind of things. So there are two ways to do that. One is to partner with ecosystem players and let your consumers have that kind of an experience, which we do in many cases when it comes to, for example, we are not setting up hospitals of our own, but we work with a bunch of hospitals who are our partners. We work partner with insurance company. Now, the retail experience of pharmacy and diagnostics, that is where we feel the time has come for us to start providing that option ourselves. And so far, the early pilots seem very encouraging, that consumers actually are living in a, we are also consumers. We live in a omni-channel world ourselves, and to expect our customers to wholly shift into one model or the other is not probably the right way either. So we believe we need to be whatever the consumers that we serve expect from us. And right now we are getting a huge, I would say, confidence boost, seeing the kind of reaction to our few pilots in the physical networks.
So how difficult or easy has it been for you when you started off as an online platform and then you have to expand to physical? What are some of the challenges that you think you
I
faced?
think I think we benefited quite a lot, because before, and to be honest, I would not claim that we have figured out physical formats or if solved the puzzle. It's just early pilots right now, but the fact is that we have a lot of digital data on our consumers. We know where are the areas where our brand is very well recognized. We know what are the micro markets that are of interest to us, and we already have a back-end supply chain that is capable of delivering at a short notice to customers. So it's much easier for us to fulfill the needs, or fill the shelf in the physical format, so to speak. So all we needed to learn or understand is this front end experience of the physical format, because the operating system, so to speak, and the how to figure out what is the right market where we stand a better chance, we kind of, that is where technology is already helping us understand that better. So in some ways, and we are not looking for um, a very large physical footprint, but I think we are looking at um, getting into a situation where in our key areas we are able to offer the omni-channel experience. So
And
I
when you
think
see key
digital has
areas,
just,
what would be those?
I'm sorry,
When you
Gurgaon is
see
where we have started. I think Bangalore, Bombay will follow. So the large cities where we have huge clusters, brand is well recognized. That's where we will start with the experience and then take it from there. I think uh, we cannot prejudge, presuppose how the markets will guide us, and we have to keep learning and seeing. Maybe the bigger opportunity will be tier 2, 3. As we learn, we'll figure that out.
Right. I'll just get Satish again. What is your take on, the whole integration between offline and online? And Medibuddy, what is it doing in this area? I mean, are you trying to also get there?
Okay, so actually we see I think Prashant rightly told, it's about following the customer, and a couple of things are there, right? One is convenience to the customer, and second is building trust. So if you go back and check Apollo Group or any of these large groups, they have been there for maybe 40 years, or let's say anywhere in the range of 30 to 40 years, they have been there in the industry. And naturally, healthcare also is a very high trust required industry for that matter, right? Because when I'm going to take, let's say, your parents, grandfather, and then put them in a hospital for a surgery, though you might have done a lot of work, but the most important thing is to trust that, okay, they're going to take very good care of the of the person, right? So that is why naturally the fastest way to get trust is physical. In the sense somebody sees you, somebody has seen you for very, very long periods of time, and they've seen you in multiple formats actually. So trust might be a very large element in which a lot of the business models actually are evolving, and they've seen there multiple other business models, right? It can be in the vision industry with Lenskart and others. So these are different models which gives us some indication about how this industry will evolve. And of course, we have to find the right, that's what I kept saying, right digital approach. So we also we operate close to 300 clinics today. And these clinics are physical, right? That means there's a doctor there, there's a paramedic there, there's actually an ambulance there. And of course, we run that for different captive audiences because it's important to understand where is the customer going to come from. So you can actually go to online, talk to a doctor online. But in case you want to book an appointment with the doctor and meet him in his clinic, we'll allow you to do that. We run our own clinics on the top of that, right? So which means it's digital from in different ways, actually, let's call it that way. And whether you own them, whether you don't own them is actually more a business model question. And then how you own them is a different business model question. But the question is, this requires, right? And let's think by the customer. No, customer wants to first talk to a doctor, get the right advice, get labs, get medicines, but at least in anywhere in the range of 9 to 10%. If you look at insurance incidents also, it'll be anywhere between 7 to 10%. It means out of 100 people who talk to a doctor, at least 10 of them will end up in a surgery or a procedure for that matter, which means for that 100 people who talk to doctor, might be 76, 70, 75 can do online. The next 25 will need a physical visit. Out of the 25, around 8 of them will need a surgery. So that means the last 25% will definitely need a physical touch, then trust, all of them. And this falls through in all of them, right? In labs also, you can do maybe path at home or blood test at home, but if you want to do X-ray, ultrasound, you definitely have to go there. Similarly in surgery, similarly in all of these. And which is why we have to follow the customer, build trust fastest, and this all will evolve. Now, the question is mostly on economics. I think time will tell, and might be before me, Prashant will tell us so how the economics for these models evolve. Yeah.
No, but I think the economics is also something that everyone, our members would also want to understand. That is it from your own business model point of view, does it work better when you have a lot of different offerings, and how does it really help gain, build a more sustainable business?
No, definitely. See, I think we're all very clear about this, that we have to build businesses for the long term. I think we have run it for the last 6-7 years. Hopefully, I should run it for the next 25 years. So the idea is to ensure that we build a very strong and solid business, which has got the right economics and right models of profitability. Now, how this will evolve is something that we will figure out, right? I think the idea is because we have the ability to invest and wait, we will figure out. And let's think about that. So even if you put up a hospital, I think Vishal will talk very well, but anywhere in the range of 4 years to 6 years will take, depending upon what kind of hospital you're investing, what is the number of beds in that hospital, which means it is not, it's going to take that kind of time, even if it's a physical place, because the doctors, all of them have to attract the right kind of customers and then build trust in that area. So it is, but this is for sure that physical alone is definitely profitable. Online alone has got its own points. In some certain parts, it's profitable. In certain parts, it is not. But when you bring these together, I think for sure it will become profitable. And then you'll find the right mixture, right? X plus Y is equal to 100. What percentage is digital? What percentage is physical? I think people will titrate and find out the right answer. That's what is the best I can tell you.
Right. Prashant, again, just like Medibuddy, and there are so many, as Vishal pointed out, 4,800 health tech platforms, the startups coming up. That's a huge number. Obviously, they have not reached the scale where probably Satish and Prashant, you both are right now. But, with the intensifying competition, what would be the winning points? What would be the winning strategies for online healthcare platforms? I don't know even if I should even call it really only online healthcare platforms. So where do you see that there are big opportunities?
In my mind, the phase one of digital healthcare ecosystem is what we have been so far seeing or building, which is building the basic plumbing, the basic infrastructure of digital healthcare, access to information, doctors, medicines, lab tests through a digital pipeline at your doorstep. So I think that was extremely key and important. But the more exciting phase is yet to come, which is where we want to be. And the ecosystem definitely is going into a much more personalized, predictive, preventive healthcare model, and a life cycle view of healthcare for the patient. So 3, 4 very clear and large aspects that are coming to the fore as a result of the infrastructure that is already there. I think number one, there's a big thing around what can be done with the data and creating these predictive personalized models. What is the trajectory that various people are on? What are the inflection points? What are the interventions that can make sure that they don't go downhill and stabilize or go in the right path? So those kind of things will get much more sophisticated as we go along and much faster now that we have data. The other big part is how the data gets collected. Historically, all of this used to be orphan data, doctors writing scribbles on um, uh, paper, and then it vanishes. Now, this is all structured, collected, collated data. The technologies are evolving. We are getting better in understanding. Also, data has started flowing in directly from devices. So this entire connected device slash IoT world, what it is about is getting real-time data input from the consumers and making it actionable thereon. So I think we're seeing diagnostics getting disrupted and moving in a pretty interesting way. Point of care diagnostics, point of care devices, and I think pretty significant. I am seeing bubbling activity in the Make in India uh, new age medical devices, which are built up again without the legacy of some of the large players. So they are pretty much built at a significantly lower cost, and they are inbuilt with connected data management, this, that, a lot of things. And I think all these, so what that results in terms of business models, long-term care plans, very specialized diabetes care plans, onco life cycle management plans. AI in radiology is a big space all by itself. So now what we have set up is the foundational piece. Using this foundational piece, a lot of the next phase is where I see the excitement, and that's where a lot of startup activity today is. So I think it's a little bit like telecom uh, kind of connected people, and then the rest of the boom came when internet came, and then mobile devices came, etc., etc. And so we're in that phase where the first big wave has kind of moved forward, and we are progressing now really fast into the next level of evolution.
So within the different segments of your business, let's talk about not just yours, but most of the online healthcare platforms, whether it's e-pharmacy or diagnostic tests or teleconsultations, insurance, healthcare services, when it, different kinds of other healthcare services or medical devices. Within all those segments, where do you really see that in the next 2-3 years, we'll see that the opportunity is much higher? So between all these segments, if you had to rate, that where do you see more opportunities now?
I have always felt the opportunity is life cycle integrated care. It's not in running one shop. It is about being the partner for a consumer across a long period of the healthcare journey. Because I think the big uh, shift that the digital platforms have the capacity to bring is to move these from individual transaction shops to a healthcare delivery model. And what I mean by that is, see, when you are inside a hospital, the doctor, the pharmacy, the diagnostic, the dietitian, everybody is focused on making you well and getting. You don't see it as a hospital runs a pharmacy as a shop and diagnostics as a shop and a clinic is a shop. But when you go into the outpatient world, all of these become independent transaction zones, largely because one, the entrepreneurs are qualified that way and real estate works that way. But when you bring it all together on a digital platform, that data allows the context to move. And as a platform, if you can work to deliver what the patient needs for long-term care management, that to me is the interesting, fun part, the holy grail of what moving it into a healthcare platform and a wellness platform rather than just a supplies and service delivery platform. So that's the big transition. So if I have to pick one, I think it's very hard to do. The reason being that I don't see it as I think it's a model of healthcare that is changing, and all of these are key components of it.
I was just trying to get into the sum of the parts.
So I'll tell you very, very specific targeted thing that is going to happen is insurance participation is going to go up. Financing in healthcare is going to get sophisticated. Those are very interesting, exciting points. Diagnostics is going to get much more organized, much more personalized, much more tailored, and is a high growth industry. Pharma might see a lot more consolidation in the future. So all these sub segments of the ecosystem have their own dynamics. Particularly excited about the broad direction is we will move to a different model of financing of healthcare. Insurance and outpatient care will be a pretty decent play. Financing through corporates will start happening in bigger ways. And to me, those are areas of a lot of interest.
Great. Before we move to the Q&A, because I just want to bring in Vishal, because he is with TPG Growth, and I want to really understand why there is so much investor interest in this area. So what is it that investors are really betting on, and how do they value this business? Because valuations are also going through the roof.
Yeah, so Isha, I think from a healthcare perspective, I think what's really happening right now is massive disruption, right? And disruption from a consumer perspective, and how a large base of consumers is getting consolidated on a few of these platforms on which you can do multiple healthcare activities, right? So yeah, many of them started from the pharmacy world, and they were basically started with delivering pharmacies at home, which quickly transformed into a whole bunch of other activities. So whether it is 1mg, whether it is PharmEasy, whether it is a couple of other players. So I think what is really happening is in this change process, and again, wearables is becoming such a big thing. India is the third largest wearable consumer in the market, in the market all over the world, right? So that is becoming a big area. So as Prashant was talking, data is going to be so big in the coming years. So the more consolidated play that you see in one platform, the more you see as multiple opportunities of providing various healthcare services on that platform. Right? And that is the reason why you see so much of investor interest right now on the health tech side. Basically because you have the ability to do multiple healthcare activities on that one platform. And I think as we've all been saying, that it is what has taken the healthcare delivery world multiple years to bring consumers together on their, in their physical premises. It has taken the health tech companies probably 1/10 of that time to bring an equivalent group of that consumers onto their platform. And as the consumers begin to, the consumer is now thinking online first. And so obviously there is a big opportunity for consumerization of healthcare to happen in the online world. So I think that is the reason why you see so much of investor interest. I think a large part of it also got driven last year by a couple of large transactions that happened. So in the US, as you know, the Teladoc bought Livongo. That was almost about an $18.5 billion deal, and which has been the largest healthcare deal per se on the health tech side. And that sort of triggered a whole new phenomenon in terms of the opportunity of various healthcare provider technology companies to come together. So that Livongo was more plan company, diabetes plans, fundamentally trying to look after care for some of these patients who have chronic diseases. And Teladoc was basically just a telemedicine company. So that's why you see, so much of interest, because suddenly you're finding the opportunities of doing many things. And I think, as we have seen in the online, whether it is food, whether it is groceries, whether it is, you've seen that disruption take place. And I think, and you see that there was massive investor interest that went behind each one of them. Fintech, same thing. So that's the reason why now today you're seeing the same kind of interest happening on the healthcare side. Healthcare has been a traditional industry for investors to participate in, because investors look at healthcare as a continuous journey, and they don't look at it. There will be spikes and lows, but healthcare is almost like an evergreen sector for investing. And so, the entire health tech revolution only creates a new opportunity.
Great. I think we'll move on to the Q&A. We have quite a few questions here, and we have about 15 minutes to wrap it up. So let's just start. One of the questions is an anonymous attendee who's sent us a question, which is: COVID was a strong driver of adoption, but how do they see the effect of COVID tapering down? I think any sense on the change in transaction volumes across important categories such as e-consultations, e-pharmacy? Satish had already given a sense of it, but if there is any quickly, if you could quantify it, or if in any way you can explain that.
No, it has only continued to grow, right? Because I think one of the question also talks about what percentage penetration you would have.
Yes.
But just roughly, if you do math also, if we are like anywhere in the range of 8 to 10 lakh doctors in India, even if all of them do 10 consultations a day, it's like 1 crore consultations. I think all of the online players put together would do anywhere in the range of 200,000 consultations a day, right? Which means you're like in the range of 1 to 2% penetration. So it means, and then since COVID, it has only grown because the market is very small, right? So you only see growth, you actually don't see dip in any of these. I think it is true with all of them, e-consultations, e-pharma, I think on all e-diagnostics also. So the digital is actually taking a percentage of the physical transactions or offline transactions. So it's only grown like because it's very small, it's growing 100%, right? But it's very, very small. But that's the idea is today you should be at like 1.5% penetration, and that should continue to sort of scale from there.
Right. So I think you've answered both the questions. The other one was from Yatindra. There's a question from Salil. Platform-based ecosystems that are getting created are very consumer-friendly and convenient. A few decades ago, these areas, doctor and patient engagement, were traditionally managed by pharma companies. Do you think that pharma have evolved with the changing times? What role can pharma companies play in the ecosystem that you are creating? So if anybody can answer that.
Prashant?
Happy to jump in here. So see, I think pharma companies, again, for the longest time, they've had a certain model of approaching the ecosystem, and what they are facing right now is the same situation, that a lot of competition between pharma companies to get the attention of doctors, get the attention of patients, and get patients on long-term therapy, and all of that is requiring that. On what we are seeing is most pharma companies have taken patient centricity as a big project, direct to patient communication. Many pharma companies are launching their own digital apps for putting out more quality content, etc., etc. So now what pharma is doing is they're realizing or understanding that they need to connect better with their doctors, better with the patients, and the digital channel is a key part of that. So a lot of pharma companies have started engaging with platforms like ours. A lot of them are doing it directly or with other platforms here and there. So pharma companies now are moving more to a pill plus service model. At least the early movement of that is starting, that if you want the patient to stay engaged on a therapy for a longer term, it's in the best interest of the pharma company, and they want to now figure out where can they get to be a bigger part of the journey. So having said that, practically, I would say it's not a monolith. There are the progressive pharma companies who have a very large. Every pharma company today has a head of digital or the head of direct to consumer or something. But there is the top tier pharma companies who are way ahead of the curve, who have been investing for the last 3, 4, 5 years. And then there are people who are still trying to learn what is going on and do they really need to play. But I think what most people intuitively have felt and accepted is that they have to figure it out sooner rather than later. So where it is, early stages of movement, but realization is pretty clear right now.
Great. The next question, I think that also maybe Prashant can answer. How has the behavior change in consumers affected the customer acquisition costs? And in e-pharmacies, customers are becoming more habitual of using these apps. Do you see any trends in terms of discounting? I mean, the kind of discounting that we've seen, will it continue, or will it, come down over a period of time?
Yeah, the reality is also that with the market growing that fast, the competition has also increased significantly. A lot more players are in the fray. A lot of offline players are also now omni-channel. So um, the war for getting the attention of the consumer is right now pretty significant. We do hope that the discounts and the acquisition costs over a period of time would be stabilized at a decent level, but right now they are pretty high, and the competitive intensity of the industry is pretty high. But I think uh, the nature of the industry or the ecosystem is such that when there is availability of capital and there is the availability of a large market, um, at some phases of market building activity is required and helpful over the long run. And then over my last 12, 13 years in the ecosystem, I've seen that it is very quickly followed by a belt tightening phase. I believe we might see that also, and the business models and the way entrepreneurs and companies react and get the economics in order when they need to is also very fascinating. So we haven't reached that phase of the journey. We are still in the hyper expansion phase, but I think we are coming to the stage soon where we'll see the ecosystem stabilize.
And when do you think, this is from me, when do you think that stabilization is likely, in how much time?
I,
Or couple of
I
years?
think the signals are out there. I think uh, the cost of capital or the free availability of capital is changing a little bit. Maybe Vishal would be better positioned for that. There is a lot of capital to be had, but the primary question primary question still continues to be market share and growth. But investors are looking for sustainability already a lot more. And I think the phase last year was a great phase for the ecosystem. It's still continuing right now, but I believe public markets clearly are showing that there's a tightening happening. And in my mind, if I were to take a bet, I think next 3 to 6 months we'll see significant tightening across the ecosystem.
Oh, that's great. There's a question from Abhishek Puri. How do you see AI, ML, and the impact on delivery? Data localization plus EMR and genomics pipelines to push towards a personalized treatment. So maybe Vishal, if you could answer the impact of AI.
Yeah, so I think a couple of areas where particularly AI is going to become very critical and is already playing a role. One is radiology. You are seeing multiple radiology enterprises now using AI a lot more because it just creates a better efficiency, better diagnosis, the more and more AI that you use. I think pathology is going to go down the same path, given the kind of scale and size that has been established by the pathology enterprises. And again, I think this is a more integrated AI tool behind the diagnostics world is going to create a much faster diagnosis of patient care, which I think, and also more precision, because I think what AI is doing is basically taking away the human error associated with many of these on the diagnostics front. On the machine learning side, likewise, the same way, with the way that you are having a whole bunch of clinical ailments now, or many diseases, right? Technology is playing a big role in multiple diseases in terms of management of those diseases. I think machine learning is going to really help us evolve management of diseases that much better. And I think, therefore, as we move forward from here, I see a big impact. And therefore, if you see a couple of the bigger companies, that have begun to use AI a lot more, you're seeing the value that they are creating for themselves.
Right. I think this question Satish can take. How did you convince established practitioners to join you, or you started with fresh practitioners in every field?
I briefly talked about this also. So you go meet them and you tell them how they can do a couple of things, right? One, initially when we started, we used to tell them how you get more customers, not from the local 10-kilometer radius. You go meet a very good quality doctor, very experienced doctor. And if you really look at the distance from which these patients actually come from, it will be like a 10-kilometer radius. But think about when I used to talk to the doctors, I would say that, hey, doctor, you're in Bangalore. Why would you not help a patient who's coming from, let's say, Mysore or Mangalore or any of these places? So he's able to increase the, what we call as the range, or essentially the spread from which he can actually provide great consultation, get the right advice. Second is also, this also called as off hours. So let's say if you go to a doctor, generally you might go to a doctor between maybe 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the morning, might be 4:30 in the evening to 7:30 in the evening. So there are times when even if you're a very senior doctor, you still have what is called as off hours, and doctors are able to start providing good service as well as reach more patients through them. And that's essentially how you start initially, right? You say increase your spread, might be help using off hours, but then of course, once they start getting onto the platform, they understand the convenience, they understand the good things, and then they try to do both, right? Patients who come and meet them offline or physically sometimes want to do the follow-up consultation, send their lab reports, and you don't have to necessarily come back again and show me the report of the blood test or the x-ray. So that's essentially how they naturally move towards from initial days to the follow-up. And then of course today the COVID has like really transformed all of them. So a lot of doctors, even if you're very senior, you've clearly understood that I need to start building my digital practice, and it's important for him or the senior doctor also to stay relevant, because the customer is demanding it, or the patient is today demanding it. And it's also mandatory by, let's say, a lot of these hospitals, right? Because they need to provide the omni-channel. In a way, for them, it's digital way, for us, the offline way. So, and doctors are adopting very fast, right? As long as patients need it, and it's also need of the hour, I think adoption has been very fast, behavior changes has been very fast.
Great. Thank you. There's a question from Alankar. This is for Prashant. Discounting in e-pharmacies has picked up again in the last few months, and I think that is what we have already addressed a bit. What is your view on the economics for an e-pharmacy business, and how do you expect competition to evolve over the next 3 to 5 years? What are your expansion plans within B2B pharma distribution and diagnostics? And do you expect to augment the e-pharmacy offering?
So I think, see, the business model is an overall, the more you have a share of the life cycle of the patient and the overall healthcare expenditure of the patient, the better your chances of monetizing, given the fact that the acquisition costs are a significant part of the economics today. And it's a business model question. We do have healthcare, I think, has a lot of high margin opportunities. E-pharmacy doesn't happen to be one of the higher margin opportunities, but it's a decent gross margin, almost 30 to 35% gross margin pie, where discounting is fairly aggressive right now, but over a period of time, things will settle down. I think the other part of this was B2B pharma distribution right now is not something we are actively focusing on. We used to do a little bit of that, but already our front end scale is enough that we can our distribution company can buy directly from pharma at pretty good rates. So we don't have the appetite or desire right now to build a B2B business in pharma distribution. As I said, insurance and corporate partnerships to us are very, very interesting. Hospital partnerships are looking very good. So those are the areas we'll be a lot focused on. Diagnostics as a space is fast growing, full of a lot of pain points, still getting organized, and I think we'll have a big role there as well.
Right. We'll quickly move on to the next one. There's a question from Karan. What is the typical consumer funnel from consultation, diagnostics, hospitalizations, and surgery pre and post COVID? Whosoever would like to take this.
So Isha, when the question is not very clear in terms of pre and post COVID, because I think the question, I guess the question is that has the conversion increased a lot more post COVID than what it was pre COVID? I don't think there is any such change, right? In terms of the consumer funnel which is coming in, whether it is getting
Maybe
a lot.
Talk about, is it more urban centric or something like that? I am also trying to understand this.
No, I think the way that I see it, and today, a lot portion of our businesses are both in tier 1 and tier 2 cities, both in urban and semi-urban cities around the country, and we find the same phenomenon. So frankly, and I think that's also the new revelation, right? That tier 2 India is consuming healthcare the same way as tier 1 India is. So that massive divide that we always thought was there between semi-urban India and urban India in terms of healthcare consumption pattern, that has actually gone away. And I think COVID is a big contributor to that too. People are becoming more conscious. People are becoming more, people are becoming more conscious about their health. People are more getting more conscious about the kind of services that they want from their healthcare providers, and people are wanting to be, are wanting to be well. And there is a massive wellness push now, which I think is a very good thing in the overall healthcare space.
Right. We've actually just run out of time. We are already at 7, but there are 2-3 interesting questions. And if it's okay, we can just push the session by about 5-7 minutes.
Sure.
Yeah. So there's a question which is a couple of people have asked. Dr. Hardik has asked, and there is a question from Viral about how are the health tech companies taking data privacy of patients seriously? How are they really managing that part?
I'll very quickly take this. I think there is no if about it. It is going to be existential. If you want to survive as a healthcare company, you better take it seriously. And the government is also coming up with all the necessary laws around it. But irrespective of that, even today, all the large players, I'm 100% sure, have very tight data management practices and encryption and all that stuff, because otherwise your business will suffer. It is a existential business need. If people are not doing it, they won't survive for long in this kind of an ecosystem.
And I think there was a question from Dr. Alok on how the national health data management policy is changing the scenario around data collection. So on the same lines.
I think it's just organizing and outlining from a requirement of the regulator that it's now not only what you need to do for the for existence of your business from a consumer perspective. Now the government has also defined that healthcare data, or is defining how the data will have to be managed and what are the consent requirements, sharing protocols, etc., etc. So we are getting organized about it, deliberate about it, and I think it's great. Having said that, as I said, it was always existential, and if anyone was taking it lightly, it was putting their own business model at risk.
Correct. There's a question from Vishwanath for you. You spoke about some consolidation happening in the pharma segment. What exactly is that consolidation going to be?
I think in India, we have a very, very fragmented supply chain compared to any other parts of the world. And most of the small pharmacy players actually are struggling to, even though the gross margin is in 30-35% range, the cost structures are very high for those small entrepreneurs to continue to run profitable enterprises. And what we are seeing is these 800,000 pharmacies, some 40-50,000 distributors. If you look at the US market, it has primarily 3 distributors. China has a couple of hundred, India has 40,000. 800,000 pharmacies in India, place like US, everything divided in top 10, 15, 20 chains. I'm not saying we'll get to the US, I don't think we should. But what I feel is that definitely the cost structures are increasing, the margin structures are where they are. As a result, economies of sufficiency, economies of scale are going to be important if we are to deliver healthcare cheaper to the consumers, especially in supply chains. So what I expect is that, and that's where, whether it's Ascent at Pharmacy, Keymed, Reliance, Udan, in distribution side, there's very active work going on toward building larger platforms that are more efficient, and that's a secular move. It will happen, and we will see more and more consolidation across various parts of the supply chain, because scale does bring in efficiency there.
Right. I think great. We've had a lovely session, but just before we wrap up, I would want to hear a couple of parting thoughts, like, in 1 or 2 points from each of our experts. So, Vishal, if you could just talk about what would be the 2-3 key drivers of growth for all the digital health businesses in the next 4-5 years.
So Isha, if you all the global data that one sees, globally, health tech is positioned to be somewhere in the region of about $483 billion. And there is no reason as to why, with the way that India is growing and with the way that India's healthcare ecosystem is growing, that our health tech, revenues will not sort of mirror the growth that is happening around the world. I think a couple of areas which I believe will be big disruptors. We have already seen the disruption happening on the pharmacy side. I believe diagnostics is next, pathology diagnostics, because you can see now I come across a lot more on-demand diagnostic players, which is a big change from what used to happen earlier. The third area, which I believe is going to be important, as I said, is this entire wellness fitness area. And if you see all the big players, Microsoft, Google, Apple, where are they all investing in healthcare? I mean, why on our phones as devices, health is becoming a big input. And that's basically because I think wellness is going to be, and people will pay for wellness. It has always been an idea that people don't want to pay for wellness, and particularly from the India context, I think people will increasingly pay for wellness, which is a very positive change. And lastly, I think the most important part of it is that I see a lot more integration within the healthcare ecosystem by using technology, which effectively will make a more efficient healthcare ecosystem. We are hugely distributed today. As Prashant was saying, that not just in their ecosystem, which is basically on the supply chain side, but I think healthcare per se, because hugely concentrated on the urban side. So I see a lot more consolidation, which is going to happen using technology. Home healthcare, I see that to be a very big area, and COVID has actually thrown up so much new opportunity for home healthcare because home is becoming the first destination of care. So a lot of change happening around, and super exciting time for the change process in healthcare for India.
Right. Satish, if you could also tell us, how do you see the future? And especially, how do you think that what will be the 2-3 key critical points that will be essential for your business to be sustainable, profitable over a period of time?
No, absolutely. Just to add to what Vishal told, data will actually play a very, very key role, right? So when you think about customers, we're going to start thinking about them holistically, and that's exactly what we've been trying to do. And then a lot of them trying to do, that means you need to help them all the way from consult to lab to medicine to home care to mental, and then get surgery, and then bring him back for the recuperation, which is the home health care. And how you have to sort of technically keep one single health record that can actually crisscross between online, offline, and manage all of this becomes very, very critical. Because once you have this kind of information, a management of multiple problems. So the example of Livongo clearly talks about chronic disease management programs, right? India as a country, initially we had a lot of infectious diseases. Now we're moving to communicable disease, non-communicable disease, NCDs, which is essentially hypertension, diabetes. So all of this requires actually long-term plans. You don't necessarily get out of diabetes in one day. You don't necessarily get out of hypertension in one day, which means it has to be long-term, which essentially means platforms like this are most amenable because a physical visit is not needed. You need the right input on food, sleep, water, all of this, finally leading to better and better health and fitness. And then all of the remote monitoring devices finally help you. And we will, I think we'll see a lot of interesting innovations in financing, right? So in healthcare, you can have multiple kinds of financing. One is essentially insurance. That means you buy for IPD, buy for OPD. Some of them is what is called a subscription models. A lot of this will actually evolve over time. Some of them is just pure loans. You just give loan and get that back right. And then a lot of this actually is essentially to ensure that in a country like India with like varying economic strata, different models work for different people. And for some, it might be insurance. For some, it might be just loan at the right point of time. But it's a specialized medical loan. So all of these are different models that we believe we will see in the coming years.
But I mean, the one question was around building a profitable business of a company like yours. I mean, is it what could be 2-3 key ingredients for that?
No, so there exists absolute profit pools, right? There's no question about that at all. The only reason why profit pool today is challenged is because of what we call as a customer acquisition cost, and because the adoption is essentially digital, and you're compressing the timeline needed to actually scale. So generally, example, right? The largest chain of hospital today helps only 15,000 patients a day in consultations. You take the largest hospital group, which has got around 75 hospitals. You stand outside them and count the number of patients who went in and went out. It's only 15,000. Actually, more patients actually get on our platform like us and then get consultation on a daily basis. Now, it's because we have compressed the timeline to reach this kind of scale, which is essentially why there's some amount of challenge. But fundamentally, the profit pools exist, or fundamentally profitability exists. It's just that it takes time for you to invest ahead of time. You're investing heavily in the digital infrastructure, brand building, and all of that, which otherwise would have been built over so many years. So that's all is so fundamental economics is pretty much strong in the ecosystem, because discounting is not a problem. Right? Of course, there's some amount of discounting that's happening in the pharma industry. I'm not discounting, I'm not taking that away. But healthcare as a natural industry is not like discount driven. You don't go to a doctor because he gave you more discount. You go to a doctor because he's good, he's trusted fundamentally. You go to a diagnostic center not because the blood test is, I mean, it may be a small flat factor, but you're not going to debate whether you should take this surgery or not based on, like, say, discounting as a methodology. So which is why fundamentally economics will be very, very strong in the industry.
Great. And lastly to Prashant, I think that's what we spoke on the phone the other day. Maybe if you have if you take the addressable market size for healthcare and the penetration of all these different parts of online businesses could be anywhere between 2 to 4%. And there is an expectation that it should reach about 10% over the next 4 or 5 years. So do you think that that's achievable, and how do you really do that? So I think that would be an interesting thing.
I think the sector is bound to grow, and 10% is very much achievable. Most e-commerce sectors or digital penetration sectors, we have already seen that transformation. So now, for example, whether it's books, whether it is cabs, whether it is food delivery, we are seeing much bigger penetration than 10% and behavioral changes happened. I think the market itself, purely due to digital technologies, will expand more than 10%. So in that sense, having an overall market of 10% without even a transition happening from physical to digital, we'll just see that the market itself has that kind of headroom now. So I do think 10% is a viable, achievable number. The fundamental building blocks are in place. The flywheel has been set in motion, and we are anyway. The digital ecosystem is growing at 100%. The physical ecosystem is growing at 15-20%. So that itself is going to take care of the stabilized number. And I do feel we are in very early stages of the journey. And now with UHI coming, with the fundamental building blocks in place, everything there, so much more capital chasing this digitization of healthcare, I would be surprised if we don't hit 10%.
And 10%, you think in 2 to 3 years or 5 years would?
I would say it's a 5-year journey. It's from to grow share in a fast-growing market from 2 to 10. But nature of this is healthcare typically takes way longer than one thinks it will. Having said that, technology can make things move way faster than anyone anticipates also. So we are on that side. So if I were to take a crystal ball approach to it, I would say 5 years, 10% is where I would feel like a comfortable guess.
Right. Great. I think the digital health space is growing, the healthcare industry is growing. I think if 10% is achievable in 5 years, that will mean the online healthcare businesses will be much larger than what they are right now. So great. It was a pleasure to have all the three of you here with us. It's a very nice, enriching session. And thanks to all the members who joined us, and hope to get you on board again for a next Prime Talk of ET Prime. Thank you, Prashant, Satish, and Vishal once again. Take care.